Again, we're discussing the readings, the first article, and we talked about relationship marketing, and we talked about marketing is essentially everything. And first, we talked about defining the market. Now we talk about marketing research. What is the size of the market? Who are the customers? Who are the competitors? What is the total market size? And very importantly, what are the trends? So this was also a very good article in this regard. So I would encourage you to read this as a very quick and practical overview. And then we talked about the 4 Ps in our introduction of the marketing mix. So the 4 Ps are the product, the price, the place, and the promotion. And then he talks about the controllable factors and the uncontrollable factors. And then this is also a good piece because it gives you a little basics on writing the marketing plan. So I would suggest reading this, developing the plan, your steps, and the outline. So this is a very good article for your own efforts, your own project, executive summary, current situation, competitor analysis, marketing objectives, marketing strategy, the 4 Ps, action programs, budget, measurements, supporting documents. So now then he spends some time talking about marketing strategies, about your product, your price, your placement, and your promotion, again, structured around the 4 Ps. A checklist for the marketing strategy, which is very practical. The importance of testing and tracking in marketing. That's a whole subject of another course. And how do we implement the marketing? So that was it's a very good article. I encourage you to read it. Again, it's specifically for the agricultural segment, but it's quite broad as well as specific in its discussion. Any comments, any thoughts? You think it's better to discuss this via chat room? Any comments on this article? Good article? Bad article? Okay. Tran Tan Hyun says it's a good one. Anyone else have opinions? Kim Unsol says it's a good article. So it's in LMS, but I would, so you can find it there in a PDF. It's in LMS. So this article is fairly straightforward and actually not too much to read. So Shelby Hunt wrote a more academic, more technical article on what is marketing. And Vince Hans Peter talked about the differentiation between profit and nonprofit industry. That's interesting. So let's talk about this article. It was a very famous article. It was from 1976. So it sounds old, but it was a very formative article in marketing. So is marketing a science? And so they wanted to really develop what is marketing. What is the proper conceptual domain of the construct labeled marketing? So the American Marketing Association at that time defined marketing as the performance of business activities that direct the flow of goods and services from producer to consumer or user. So marketing is not easy to define. So I wanted to share this article with you because this shows you an academic setting that people are not always, this is not some kind of textbook that comes from the 10 Commandments and God created it or whatever. These are people debating and trying to understand, what is the basic subject matter. So marketing is not easy to define. No one has yet been able to formulate a clear, concise definition that finds universal acceptance. So Ohio State University, they suggest that marketing being considered the process by which a society demand structure for economic goods is anticipated, enlarged, satisfied through the conception, promotion, exchange, physical distribution of goods and services. You can see that the 4 P's are kind of entering into here. Product, promotion, price, and placement. So in this evolving description, notice the absence of a business activities, as it was in the AMA definition for business activities. This expanded to social process. That's a very important concept. So it went from kind of business oriented to a little more social. So then they talk more about this debate. Again, non-business organizations. So what is required is a broader perception and definition of marketing that has before been the case, one that recognizes marketing's societal dimensions and perceives of marketing as more than just a technology of the firm. Very famous, Kotler and Levy included not-for-profit organizations, and there was a lot of debate. The crux of marketing lies in a general idea of exchange rather than narrow thesis of market transactions. So broadened to non-business organizations, marketing societal dimensions. So the movement to expand the concept of marketing probably became irreversible when the Journal of Marketing devoted an entire issue to marketing's changing social environmental role. So they coined the term social marketing. So if we look at the COVID-19 response in Korea, there is a lot of marketing involved. The government briefings twice a day, the signs that say you have to stay apart 2 meters, the importance to wear masks and the signals that send it, the process of distributing those masks and how do we manage that? Do we go to the pharmacies, 2 masks per person? All of this is marketing. It's not a for-profit business, but it's essentially marketing. So marketing is specifically concerned with how transactions are created, stimulated, facilitated, and valued. So the disadvantages of broadening the concept of marketing, turning the attention away from important problems in the area of physical distribution, emphasizing methodology rather than substance, and increasingly esoteric abstract marketing literature. So conflicting definitions of marketing, social marketing. So it was still up to debate. So they continue on the scope of marketing. The scope of marketing is unquestionably broad. Diverse subject areas such as consumer behavior, pricing, purchasing, sales management, product management, marketing communications, comparative marketing, social marketing, all of these issues, packaging, channels of distribution, marketing research, which we discussed, societal issues of marketing, retailing, wholesaling, social responsibility, international marketing, physical distribution. So the most widely used conceptual model of the scope of marketing is a familiar 4 Ps that was popularized in the early 60s. So the consumer, the marketing mix of price, place, promotion, and product, and then the third circle are the uncontrollable factors of political and legal environments. So micro, macro, normative, positive aspects of marketing. And so this is their framework, micro level, the positive things, the normative, how companies should do things, and that's the profit sector, the nonprofit sector, So this framework is very important in fitting the whole scope of marketing. So societal issues and marketing science. And they conclude with, is marketing a science? So entire conceptual domain is profit, micronormative marketing is not, and most importantly, probably cannot be a science. We can't really test many of these things. So there's different areas of debate. And, you know, this is a very comprehensive article about this. So let me ask a question. Why don't you answer here? What is marketing in your estimation? Anyone care to answer? What is marketing? That's a good answer. The creation of value in a consumer's viewpoint. Any other comments? I think most people would agree it's not so easy to define marketing. So I think advertising and offering goods for service for sale is a very confined concept of marketing. Marketing is much broader than just advertising. The advertising is just the promotion part of the P. And offering goods and services for sale, actually creating the product is part of marketing. If you create a product that nobody wants to buy, then you have failed not in product development, you have failed in marketing. So I think this is a big misconception. Marketing is not just advertising. If I have one lecture basically about advertising in this course, if I made it into, if marketing was about advertising, we'd have, you know, a whole course of, you know, all the lectures about advertising. And the process of delivering the goods to the market, that's the placement side of the 4 Ps: product, price, promotion, and placement. So Daria basically focused on promotion. Jung Hyun So Jung Hyun basically focused on placement. Those are only one part of marketing. Any other thoughts? These are very good comments because it's important that I understand, you know, what you are thinking, because if I'm going to deliver a lecture on marketing and you have the wrong idea or a different idea, then I am not accomplishing the proper product and delivery of the product. So this conversation here is an example of marketing. I'm not testing you. I am actually testing myself. That's very important. Now we have 36 people in this group. Very few people are answering, maybe because you think I'm testing you, but I'm actually testing myself. So when I see your responses, I say, oh, I'm not delivering this product that is changing your mind. So again, for example, Ji-Chung Wang is focusing on the promotion side, getting people interested. That's part of it. And Kim On-Sol is talking about distribution of goods and services. That's only part of it. That's the placement side. I think Michelle Bongsawan said it nicely. Creating value by understanding the needs of customers and providing them with products and innovative products and services. That's a good way to put it, creating value. Chang Byung-hwa said root of income. That's a good way to put it because it's ultimately how you create value. So let me ask a question in a different way. So check the chat room. Is advertising the same as marketing? So here's another way that I'm framing the question so that I can understand you as the customer and the understanding. So here's a question. Is advertising the same as marketing? Yeah, advertising is only part of marketing. It is a part of marketing. Okay. Involves but not limited to advertising. Anyone else? Is advertising the same as marketing? So let me ask a little bit different question. Is marketing bad or good? Okay. Right. What else? You know, sometimes people say, oh, this is just marketing. They seem to imply that marketing is bad. So is marketing bad or good? So I'll give you an example. Sometimes people think marketing is bad. They say, oh, this is not a good product. And they did a lot of marketing in order to sell it, implying that without the marketing, the bad product or the fake product or whatever would not sell. So that's a problem. That's like with anything. If you're a doctor and you're saving lives, but you use bad medicine and kill patients, that's also a bad thing. So everything has obviously bad and good parts to it. But marketing tends to get this negative aspect. But think of it the other way. If you have a really good product, a product that helps people, a product that saves lives, or even a nonprofit that you're doing something to encourage people to wash their hands and avoid the virus and so forth. But if you don't market it properly, which means you don't place it in the right way, you don't price it in the right way, you don't make the product appealing, you don't promote it or advertise it in the right way, all the marketing activities, if you don't market that good product well, that the fact that the marketing is bad is it did not make it possible to sell that product. So good marketing is a good thing. So yes, somebody mentioned pyramid schemes, things like that. Those are actually in many cases illegal. So and bad products. is actually bad marketing, because if you make a bad product, it's part of the product mix in the marketing. You made something that's not good for the market. So, of course, you can have good and bad finance. You can have a fraudulent finance. You can have finance that enables a company to build a product and have very little resources. They get some loans or something like that. So finance sometimes gets a bad name because of the global financial crisis and bankers that did some bad things, etc. So same for finance and accounting, uh, and of course politics. So marketing is intrinsically not bad, intrinsically not good. It depends on the intention and the ethics. And the last lecture will be about marketing ethics. So if you really want to understand marketing, I would read those two articles. One is very basic and practical. The other one's a little bit more theoretical and thinking. So now we have the strategy readings, and I gave 3 articles. The most important one is really Michael Porter's What is Strategy? And then I talked about specifically about new products, radically new products, because that's a key area for entrepreneurs. And of course, you're young, and so the future you will be bringing new products. So you need to know some of this. And then strategy is very complicated. This is a lecture was generally on strategy, and want to talk about uncertainty and whether strategy becomes, in a way, uh, out of style. So Michael Porter's article, What is Strategy, is one of the key articles in this area, so you should read this. And basically, this is where we talk about operational effectiveness is not strategy, because it leads to competitive convergence and ultimately no advantage. So strategic positioning is different activities. A unique and valuable position, making trade-offs, choosing what not to do, and creating a fit among companies' activities. This is the basic summary. I would encourage everyone in a business career or in general, because strategy is so important, should read Michael Porter's article. What is strategy? So this is very interesting. If we look at this as an article, as a form of marketing, how does somebody remember this article? There's so many articles about strategy. So actually, Michael Porter had a very interesting strategy. If you start an article with what is strategy, what would be your opening sentence? How would you begin the article? Your title of your article is What is Strategy? How would you begin the article? Let's get some answers here. How would you begin this article? If you were to write an article, what is strategy? How would you begin it? So Won Min Kim, what do you think? How would you begin the article? Rahman, okay, start. So, Won Min Kim, what would you say would be your beginning of an article entitled "What is Strategy"? Okay, so you say you would start to navigating marketing, but this is an article on what is strategy. So let's start with Rahman Ali Sultan. What would you say? How would you start the article? Okay, so Hans Peter wrote he would start with how strategy has historically evolved, etc. So that would be a very classic beginning to the article. You talk about the history of strategy and so forth. So what would be your first sentences? How would you start the article? So let's go to Jung Hyun So. Jung Hyun So, what would you say? What would be, okay, good. If we know this definition of strategy, how strategy is defined, etc. Okay, so here's my point. Remember, Michael Porter wrote, strategy requires you to make trade-offs to choose what not to do. He writes, strategy is about one aspect of strategy is about choosing what not to do, right? So for example, we talked about strategy. I want to be the world's best company. I want to do everything. I want to conquer the whole world. That is not a strategy. What does that mean? I'm going to go to Europe. I'm going to go to Asia. I'm going to make cars. I'm going to make X-ray machines. I'm going to make boats. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to do everything great. And a lot of Korean companies sometimes have this as a strategy because it sounds good, it looks good. You know, 기분이 좋아요. We feel good. You know, these are not strategies. Strategy actually is what you choose not to do. That's one of the central messages of this article. So I want you to listen very carefully because Michael Porter is not just writing about strategy, he is implementing a strategy to convince you of that point. So if he says strategy is choosing what not to do, look at his first sentence. His first sentence in the article is operational effectiveness is not strategy. In other words, this is actually a very brilliant strategy about how to present strategy. Most people, if I were to tell you to write a paper on strategy, you would say, well, strategy is this, here's the history of strategy, and be very logical. It would be a good paper. And Hans Peter gave a good reply, and he said, I would talk about history of strategy and then how strategy develops. That would be a good paper a smart paper, you know, all that. But it would not be a brilliant paper. It would not be a paper that you will always remember. It would not be a paper that actually uh, embodies or actually expresses the core concept. And Michael Porter doesn't begin his paper with a definition of strategy. He talks about what it is not, which is essentially his main point, is when you are strategic, you choose what not to do, what you're not best in, what is not going to make the most profit, and so on and so forth. And he begins the paper not with a definition of strategy, which would be a good paper. He begins the paper with a definition of what it is not. And that is the essence of strategy. In other words, he's doing what we call in advertising, the medium is the message, or how he's saying it is also the same as what he is saying. This is a very powerful concept in advertising and marketing. Does everyone understand that? How this article became such a classic, how this article is very special, not because I say so, not because it was Harvard Business Review, but actually he designed the paper to have a very lasting impact. He begins with a very unusual, different approach to the paper. And remember, the other thing he said is strategy is unique and valuable position involving a different set of activities. So if he began the paper with the expected, here's the definition of strategy, so on and so forth, it would not be different, it would not be unexpected, it would not be special, and thus it would not be great. So we can read this article in two ways. We can read this as a kind of just the information, check it off like we're students, or we can read it as a whole way of thinking. And that's what this article is. Now, I'm not saying this is like the Bible, but you know, when people read certain religious texts or they read great literature, they don't just say Adam did this and Eve did this and check it off, and Adam ate the apple and Eve didn't eat the apple, or whatever it may be. There's the stories. There is a deeper meaning and a kind of a strategy to these stories and a mindset. So these are the things that make for a very good paper. So I encourage you, when you're writing your work, when you're writing your papers, not just this class, but other classes, of course, when you're pitching your startups, to think in these ways of creating a different message and a strategic approach to that. And Hans Peter said, yes, it's smart to look at strategy in a contrarian view, because in fact, being strategic is in fact contrarian. So he's actually implementing his approach to the paper, implementing his strategy. This is why this is a very brilliant paper. So when you read it again and you think about it, it's not just an academic professor, blah, 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 you know, talking, and I need to read it because Professor Gurel is going to ask me about it, and it's boring, and I'm not excited about this paper. It's just another paper. But if you read it with this in mind, and how he has transformed it into an expression of his strategy, concepts, strategy rests on unique activities, then I think you'll better understand it. Now, that being said, I don't think this is the greatest piece of literature. I don't think it's Shakespeare. It's you know, not the Bible and so forth, or you know, other works. The writing is a little bit boring, but I think if you see how it's structured, I think it's quite brilliant. And I wanted you to understand that. Okay. So that's that article, The Entrepreneurial Edge. So there's lots of some practical aspects to this. So I encourage you to read the article. And then let's go to the next article. So this is really a good compendium of strategy. So this is strategic marketing planning for radically new products and open systems model, environmental forces. There's more discussion about the Sony Betamax, critical issues grid. So the focus, the environments, critical issues grid for videotape recorders, Bayesian networks. All of these things, parts of the market are connected, and how can we optimize that? So this is quite a theoretical article, but I think you get a sense of the sophistication that's involved in bringing new products out. It's not just saying, I got a new product, great idea, let's put it out on the market. You need to accommodate in a qualitative or mathematical, quantitative way, all of these factors in the market. It's not just about advertising, as you can see. So here's a critical issues grid for electric vehicles. What are the political issues? What are the infrastructure issues? What are the behavioral issues? What are the economic issues for electric vehicles? And then creating the Bayesian network for that based on each step in this process and how they influence it. How can we optimize it? Should we focus on consumer demand? Should we focus on government assistance? Should we focus on manufacture and supply chain? For example, when Uber was bringing its new product, the ride-sharing app, they looked at these networks and they said the most critical aspect is the government regulation. We are going to manage that so we can bring this out. Tada did not do that. Certainly they realized it, but they didn't do it successfully, and the National Assembly voted against Tada. If Tada had focused more resources on managing the public opinion and managing that government relations, you might consider it negative or whatever, but that was the only way. That was a critical factor, critical issue in bringing that new product. So if Tada had, there were many people who said, I like Tada. I'm so disappointed that the politicians, voted against it. So if Tada was able to get more public opinion, that could have been changed. So this is a very fairly complicated article. Read it if you wish, but I think if you want to approach things in a sophisticated way, I think you'll benefit from this article. The last article we'll talk about today is this one, The End of Strategy. We talked at the end of this lecture about uncertainty and how we position ourselves in uncertainty. So the End of Strategy talks about very fast changing environments, fast forward to perpetual change. How do we deal with these very rapid changing environments? Is strategy useful? Of course, even in this context, managers, strategic management, strategy substitutes still have a role. Managers need to manage short-term factors, adapt to behaviors over time. But then they look at different sorts of models of punctuated equilibrium, like in evolution. Differential change context, which is another framework for understanding rapid change. And so they say, is the structural approach to business strategy still relevant? This approach not only does well in evolutionary context, but also accommodates moderate exogenous changes. So they believe that strategy is still going to be important. But I think that actually the important thing is to create strategically flexible organizations. So organizational strategy, how organizations respond to this change will be increasingly important. So those are the first two lectures of reading. We will catch up with the readings next time. We will not review market analysis readings today, but keep reading the articles as background. During our discussion period, I'll highlight what articles I think and what parts of the articles I think are important. But I'd like you to participate more next time and get some opinions about the articles. Think beyond just the words. Why is the article good? Maybe I don't like the article. I won't always be giving you articles that are the best or perfect, because the idea is for you to establish and propose your critical position. So for example, Michael Porter's article is a very famous, great article, and I think it is a very good article, but I don't think it's particularly interesting reading from the point of view, the actual words. He doesn't write brilliantly or, very elegantly, but the structure of the article and the content of it is quite compelling. So I would like you to develop a critical eye, for these articles. It's not just reading and regurgitating for the discussion, but reading and getting your opinion on it, independent opinion. So we're going to finish now. Any questions? Good weekend. And see you next week. I will again upload the lecture and readings a few days before Friday. In terms of books, I don't think there are any particular books. I think you should focus on the readings that I have. If you want to find some other books, that's fine. We touch upon the marketing topics in the lecture, and you may want to go on the web to see more. So thanks a lot and have a good weekend.
Professor, it's about my attendance last week. I had, Professor?
Yeah, you can email me about that. I don't want to take the class time with that. So just email me.
Okay, thank you.
If you have particular private
can you tell me the email by the chatting here? I don't know your email.
I just sent it. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good weekend. Bye.